local recordings. It's like,
yeah,
maybe. I feel like we need to get some intro music now.
I know. That's our next branding.
I wonder if who could we get?
There is music in here under brand or something, I think.
Background music?
Yeah. I don't know if the viewers hear it though. So that's only. That just sounds like an El Camino rolling.
I really hope people can hear this. I think they can.
I hope. Let me go check it. I'll check it on YouTube. It's cool. They'll show it live, so that's neat. All right, let me mute over here. All right, we'll give everybody an extra minute. What do you think? I feel like we're a little early.
But, yeah, we'll give it a minute.
Yeah, what is it, like a 2-3 minute delay?
Yeah, something like that. Cool. Want to make sure people can hear the.
Yeah.
Oh, get out a countdown too.
Oh, nice. Oh, all right. Looks like we lost our first viewer.
It's the.
Is this thing on?
They were not ready for whatever was coming.
Yeah. They saw the logo. This is not the Atomics on a Friday I expected.
There's actual production quality.
These guys actually showed up this time.
Just wait till they get to the actual content and they're like, okay, this is the production quality I was expecting.
Yeah. When things start crashing, this is what they expected. This is what I thought we were getting into today.
Really just coming in strong at this one. This is phenomenal.
I feel like my lighting is all messed up today. All right, we got
5.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's
10 seconds.
Yeah. Let the music end at least.
It's gonna loop, so it'll just keep going. Oh. There is no end. All right, we got 4 viewers. I think we can officially kick it.
Right. It's coming in hot today. Excellent. Cool. I'll kill the El Camino of security here, our banner. Thanks. That was my next button to push.
I figure we could tag team it.
Yeah, I know. Just double tap. So welcome to the official Atomics on a Friday, as opposed to the unofficial that you were probably expecting. And this is exciting. So we're pumped to get moving here. As you see, we got an actual logo this time.
We're legit.
Yeah, we'll have stickers tomorrow. Shouldn't the intro slide come before the agenda? We're still figuring this out.
I figured if we announced who we are and then went to the agenda, I feel like we're out of order, but I don't know. Again, I feel like we should.
The agenda does call out who we are. Anyway, the short agenda is who we are. Today is actually going to be a lot of content, and again, Atomics on a Friday is meant to be geared towards the blue teamer, the defender of an organization, trying to learn new things, how to hunt through data, how to execute atomics, things like that. And so a lot of everything we're going to go through today is really kind of going to be the more core of our show here. We're going to use a DFIR report to build what we're calling atomic theories. We're going to jump into detection and mitigations. I think we have mitigations and all the discussions in there, plus next on Atomics on a Friday, which will probably include our stickers.
I knew we forgot something, which is mitigations. we'll slap them in there as we go.
For sure. It'll happen, I'm sure. Anyways, I'm Michael Haig. I'm a senior. I was like, really? I'm a threat connoisseur, but senior threat researcher at Splunk. Been doing. Gosh, we've talked a little bit about this last time. I feel like do we have to repeat? Anyway, I've been in the industry for 10 years, doing a lot of EDR and endpoint stuff all throughout this time. Started in, standard sysadmin-y type work, network engineering, and here we are today.
Right on. I'm Paul. I'm a principal incident handler over at Red Canary, focusing on customer security operations, as well as community stuff with Atomic Red Team. So as a maintainer, started out in help desk, worked into security analyst roles, and then into incident handling. I've been here at Red Canary for over 3 years, handling a lot of different incidents and security threats throughout the course of my time here, and really digging in and trying to help people understand threats and what they can do, and prove that it's not difficult to layer your defenses and make security better. So hopefully these help, and enjoy our sweet logo.
Yeah, Paul and I are maintainers for Atomic Red Team, hence the kind of atomic nature of things. But yeah, let's jam, dude. I'm excited.
Let's get in. All right. I don't know if people can see this, so we'll add a banner. Wait, I don't know how. Actually, there we go.
Oh, I could drop the link, dude.
There we go.
Got you.
So we'll push that out as a comment as well, but we're going to kind of use this as the base today from this DFIR report that came out. Actually, it was earlier this year. The threat occurred last December using proxy shell as the logon. So let's actually pivot over to that and just kind of jump into it. So what we want to do today is, instead of focusing on single technique or single atomics, is to kind of take something like a report and how can we strip it apart into the basic concepts of it, test some of the things that come out of it, and kind of validate our controls and kind of look into it. We're going to touch on some of the exchange portion of it, because that is kind of a big lead up to it and is kind of coming back around, as we see with the proxy NAT shell, similar to proxy shell in itself. So there's some overlaps and similarities. So we'll kind of touch on those and how we could potentially try and use some analytics and kind of some of the problems we ran into while trying to figure out how we could build some atomic tests for it, and potentially what we would be able to do. So getting in this test, sorry, just too many screens. So we'll step into kind of what happened with the initial setup, which is going to be the proxy shell exploitation. We'll actually kind of jump into Metasploit, rip it live, touch on some of the logs and where we can build some analytics around. And then our primary focus is going to be around some of the activity that occurs after it, using Atomic Red Team. We actually made a nice little script that we have GIS for. And we'll kind of show how you can leverage testing on a single endpoint, but then scaling it outwards, right? Because I think that's an important aspect of as you're going, right, getting comfortable with single tests, understanding how it looks on one endpoint. But as this kind of activity goes, because not all attacks just stay on one endpoint, is to go across multiple endpoints and throughout the environment. So kind of looking at the pipeline validation aspect as well. So yeah, this kind of a pretty straightforward one from the testing aspect from Atomic Red Team, but we're going to kind of jump right now into the actual exchange side of things. So let's pivot back to our slides and kind of jump into that real quick.
Sure. Man, fast.
I love this platform. It's so good.
One thing I wanted to mention too was I think the kind of the part that we want to show with a single endpoint and the multi-endpoint is also just like how the adversary typically, when you read these DFIR reports or any kind of report, it's ransomware or whatnot, but they will get that on that beachhead, and then they will spread laterally across all these other machines. And so that's kind of why we wanted to showcase that piece in particular. With we could execute atomics all day long on a single box, but typically in these type of events, they're across multiple endpoints. And so we felt that was important to add for today, because we can do that with the Atomic Red Team. So.
Right.
Yeah, dude, hit it.
Actually, you're in control of the slide if you want to hit the next
Heck
one.
yeah.
Cool. All right, so let's touch on proxy shell real quick, high level. We're not going to super dive into like how it functions. There's a lot of great write-ups already out there. It's been around for a bit, but quick high level. Really, what it's doing is it's chaining 3 vulnerabilities together in order to get the shell onto disk. So there's kind of some things around there. And again, there are some other vulnerabilities in Exchange that are very similar. So the one we're going to focus on today is proxy shell. There's also proxy not shell, which is kind of very similar to proxy shell itself. And of course, you have stuff like proxy logon, and there are a few others that kind of achieve RCE as well. So again, while proxy logon and proxy not shell aren't associated with the port, I think they're still important to kind of highlight. And because the code's available, you can go look right at the code from Metasploit itself, right on GitHub, and kind of just step through the code and try and understand it of what potentially happens. But of course, one of the best ways to actually test it. But again, unfortunately, we kind of ran into some issues when trying to figure out how we could use an atomic to mimic or emulate some of the activity that occurs. So we'll kind of touch on that as we go through it. But let us hit the lab and pop some shells. So first I need to remove that. And then I'm going to share screen, which is now going to be
Nice.
this. I'm going to completely lose sight of all of this. So let's go.
Yeah, I think sort of the neat thing with proxy shell is just the ability to unauthenticated drop that shell and it performs its actions, which we'll see here. And then the difference with proxy not shell is you're using using a user account. And from the testing I've done with proxy not shell with the Metasploit module is it could be an admin user, it could be Bob in accounting who's non-admin, and all of that seems to do the trick no matter what. I'm just going to move it to just you. Let me see if I can move these over. Nope. I'll just move it to full screen then, Paul, just because it is a little small.
Okay. I can try and zoom in here in a second.
You're good. But yeah, so both are very powerful. I think it was Kevin Beaumont said that proxy not shell is like far more, I think he said it's more reliable than proxy shell because it's obviously authenticated. You don't have to do some of the functions that you'll see with proxy shell. And the nice thing with Metasploit is you can go in and review the code and see what it's running. The default payloads can be a little noisy, I found. And so as a practitioner, it's a good test to obviously kick it up with Metasploit because it's easy, but definitely flip and check out the POC codes that were dropped because some of them aren't as dramatically noisy with dropping their payloads, the default payloads. Yeah, rip it. Let's see some shells.
What I do?
Oh no!
Oh,
It can't be nobody.
wait. No, that doesn't make sense. Failed to validate outpost.
It shows it as blank there under your payload option.
I could. Oh, is it going to do the auto check fail again? What do we have to do? Oh, it's going to work. Maybe.
Yeah,
we'll find out.
Maybe. Yep. Are you running? So you're running Exchange 16, vulnerable version, all that usual jazz.
Yep. Default install. I have some of this kind of queued up from last testing.
Cool.
This is kind of where it starts to get interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll let that kind of go through its thing, but we'll jump into that in a second.
Yeah. Yep.
No session error. Oh man, that's what happens when you do it live.
Here, let me switch because I do have it running.
Got it. Go.
Yep. All right. Boom.
Sharing.
All right. So same deal. Metasploit. I love shells, and in particular, just using the same proxy shell. I have just already set it up. Our host is that box, and then my local host is set up, ready to go. Exploit, run. It will go off. It starts a handler, and then it goes and performs its magic here. Confirmed it's vulnerable. It can retrieve on the back end. It gets the host. It performs that email address kind of searching. So found 2. I have Bob hack me and then administrator. and then it goes and, not that part, but here, this is where it'll run that mailbox import export piece, or assigning it to that user. Here's the different SID, which is administrator. It saves that draft email, which is kind of like as you're reviewing this, as you run it as a defender, this is one of those points of reference where you can go and take this and search in your logs, right? You want to know where it's at. And then obviously as another point here is we have our shell written to that OA auth page here, the ASPX. So those are kind of in my brain, I'm already putting the pieces together of how a proxy shell is popping this machine. Just with these two simple artifacts, there might be something there. What about a role assignment, things like that? Can I detect that? And this one takes a little bit longer. I'll bring our picks back here. This one takes a little bit longer to run because it's waiting for shell to write. It's waiting for all this stuff. It's sending the stage, the payload, and these are the default payloads. So it will take a couple extra seconds, I know. And it's flopping over the internet from A to China and back or something. I don't know, but
wherever you deployed it, right?
Yep. And my box is the same, Paul. It's just an Exchange 16 that's way behind on releases and all that. But if you want to flip back to your logs, that's a really cool place to kind of dig in and just start looking at that raw data piece for a minute. And then I can share it in Splunk here too.
So let's go back to Exchange. So as Mike kind of alluded to, there's kind of some interesting things. One key is this auto discover piece component, especially with PowerShell, should not standardly be in the log. And what the Metasploit module does is it actually has a library built in, which is, I forgot, we looked at it the other day. It's in the code. But basically, it creates fake data. Yeah, so there's different options for it, and it creates basically fake email addresses. So seeing something that is not your internal domain in here is super suspicious. And then there's other things like Python requests for GET requests.
User agent.
Yep. And then which you did touch on. So this is just from the IIS logs. Now that's not including things that we can also then start to pull out from PowerShell logs and Exchange logs, which if you've ever looked at Exchange logs, there's 50 logs that get dropped or can be dropped.
Yeah.
So there is quite a bit, but IIS is probably one of the great ones to start with. And as you can see, it kind of just goes through and does its thing.
Yep. And these are the base IIS logs, right?
Yep. So write an inet logs, log files, and then based on the day. Let's see if we get anything for today.
Bring our picks back here. But yeah,
we can start to see some of the same things we saw from our earlier successful tests. And of course the activity. But
your user puppage.
Let's kill that, and let's actually pivot to the slides. Let's go look at where those are going to jive.
Got it. I will reshare my screen here. Earlier, it took a while to pop that shell, so once it comes back, I will reshare and we can look at it.
So from an Exchange log standpoint, I did spell Exchange right. Kind of the core components of it are going to be the new management role assignment and the new email export request. And then actually that's a typo on the last bullet. It should be remove mailbox export request. So as Mike kind of saw in his Metasploit instance, one of the things it does, it's going to assign a user the ability to export inbox or mailbox items. So in that case, they want to be able to export the that particular email from there and leverage that as the web shell access. So within Exchange, you can see this. If you have PowerShell logging enabled, that should also contain it, as it uses on the back end for Exchange, it uses WinRM for PowerShell to actually do this. So you should actually see it in kind of potentially both. So if you're getting one or the other, you should be able to key off of those. We pointed out earlier, which is the IIS logs. You'll get some variation of this, especially focusing on the actual email address, as that will be uniquely generated every time it executes. So it'll actually be different. So if we went back and probably looked at 3 days of logs based on our testing, it will probably be different every single time we look at the logs or every time we re-execute it. From the endpoint standpoint, there are specific file paths, which Mike pointed out, and we'll go back and look at, but there's specific paths in which those ASPX files, the web shells, get dropped to disk. So looking for suspicious ASPX creates for them that on the endpoint level, as well as W3, WP, which we'll jump into later, doing some interesting activity.
Yeah, didn't mean to hijack, but here's the session. Yeah, this is just the session obviously dropped here. It does clean up or attempts to clean up its shell. It removes that mailbox export request that it created, and then it obviously removes the draft email, and then you get your shell. So, and you're running as system.
Yeah, so that new mailbox export request that basically queues a job or whatever the terminology they use is on the back end to actually create the export, and then attackers want to clean the track, so they'll actually then and in this case Metasploit does it for you, which is runs the remove mailbox request, so basically clear out that there was a request done. So we can see here, because IIS is web server, it runs as system, so when the shell gets created, you're running as system, so basically you are elite at that point once you have it, so then you can start to create really low-level persistence, credential theft, etc., starting to pivot from that, which we'll jump into when we go into some of our interesting atomics based off of this.
And so we talked about some of the artifacts on just from the Metasploit side, and then like as it's on the bottom of the slide, it's the same stuff, right? You have a file write, and typically what we've seen is it's always been in like 3 different paths for exchange. And then it's always a W3, WP, IIS writing or spawning command or PowerShell, which, that's all very just kind of like that common behavior. Trying to think if there was anything else that was standing out on this. Otherwise, I think that's it.
No, I think that was like super high level of the setup and leading into the actual activity that occurs after the PowerShell execution from the proxy shell exploit.
Yeah. Cool.
What's next? Okay, so
now what?
Kind of set the stage to like setting up, because we read the report. Not an easy way with an atomic at the current state to kind of test and validate this, but the continued activity, what do we do with it? Like, how do we think about it? So as we'll pivot back to it and kind of step through, but really what we're doing is we're going to go through and kind of step through each thing that occurred, and then try and map it back to an atomic test or something that's very similar, right? If we think about different ways you could achieve whatever that objective is, let's say creating scheduled task, like how many different ways could you create a scheduled task? Today, they could be doing it one way, tomorrow they could change it up. So just saying that I only need to detect or mitigate this single technique or this instance of a technique isn't necessarily the greatest way to do it, but it's a starting point. So even if there isn't an associated atomic, something similar within that same vein will get the job done. And then basically we step through, we try and do the mapping, we modify the test as needed, and we'll kind of show some examples of what we did. We rip it, and then we go back and we validate it. So we basically are going to step through each one, find the technique, find the relevant thing, go search for it, document it, note it, repeat. So yeah, in this case, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to share again, just the DFIR report piece here. Hopefully that's
that's actually where we wanted to go to.
Yeah, yep. And I think if I look back at our slides here, were we on track for that? Or did I jump ahead?
No, we are good.
Okay, we're good. Want me to reshare?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think for the most part, we've covered initial access and that whole just like actually kicking it off and running it. And then at a high level, we talked about what's happening in the background. And so, and you can rip these straight from the Metasploit modules and or the POCs that were all released and all that. All the exploit code will have these. But these are the PowerShell exchange management commandlets, right? That will be ran. So this is that mailbox role assignment, importing, export, creating it for that administrator user, adding it to that user. And then again, it's now creating that, was it the shell inside the draft folder? And then it goes, and once it's all done, which we saw, it will attempt to remove itself. remove that export request, kind of like that small cleanup, and then it will export that. This is the draft, right? Being written as the ASPX file. Yep, as the shell.
Cool. So, which we touched on. So, going back to quickly those three kind of examples that we touched on, at the end of the slides, we have some links, and you actually, Mike, created a bunch of atomic or analytics and recently released those, which are publicly available that people can go view. So even if we can't necessarily mimic them, there are still a lot of great detections out, and we actually have some references to go kind of get the ball rolling. But let's jump into looking at kind of what happens after the exploit. So what we're going to do is kind of just, again, step through, map our atomics to what we're going to test, kind of figure it out, map it, and then when we rip it. Once we start ripping the atomics, then kind of the thing that we're going to start to think about is how do we validate and kind of start to gauge where we're at. So some common questions just to kind of get the ball rolling is, was it recorded? Did whatever thing we expect to see it in actually generate that telemetry, right? So if it's EDR, did we see that process execution? If it's network telemetry, did our proxy firewall or IDS see that activity? Then did the data get from where it's at into potentially, if we're expecting it to go to a SIM, did it actually make it there, right? So it's one thing that the appliance or device records it, or the sensor records it. Did it actually get to where we expect it to do our analysis? Then, of course, on top of it, are there any alerts, right? If we expect something to trigger an alert, not just record it in the telemetry, but actually fire an alert, did we see it? What was the alert on? If we think about some things that are going to have multiple data sources or be able to use multiple data sources, did we see an alert from all of them, or which one, right? So then we can start to do analysis of where potentially our gaps are. And of course, then the opposite of an alert would be, was it prevented? Or what prevented it, right? Was it blocked from the network connection, but it executed on the endpoint? Were there any gaps? Did we get nothing, right? And then we basically go through each test, kind of break it down into its components, analyze it, document our findings, and then repeat for each one that we're going to do. So that's kind of like the approach that we take to kind of doing some basic validation, right? As our first time ever stepping into kind of a report and figuring out like where to go. These are kind of some basic questions to at least help you get the ball rolling. So let's go then.
Something I was thinking as you're talking about like gaps is, was it parsed inside your, wherever it's going, right? Like I was just like, yeah, that's a big one. I was thinking,
parsing is hard, and so is data mapping.
Yeah, is it
Make
standardized?
one wrong change.
Is exactly. The right TA installed? Whatever it may be. But yeah. Cool.
Right on. Let's go.
Next slide it. We next sliding? Yeah. We're next sliding. Okay. Cool, man. So this is straight from the DFIR report. You just kind of pulled the graphic, and now we're going to take this, map it to the T's. Let's do it.
Yep. So the first one we skipped over was just the PowerShell echo. So that's generally just validating that the commands can go. Still, although it is kind of interesting, how often are people executing PowerShell echo okay in your environment? So that might be interesting to test. But kind of the first one we stepped into was the scheduled tasks, specifically using ST task or SCH tasks. So that maps to T107-08-001. So in this case, what they're doing is they're actually creating a scheduled task in XML format, which then is being written or creating a task name into the Microsoft root, Windows maintenance, and then Winnie INET. And then it actually after they create it, then they go run it. So we did something a little bit different. We didn't tell it to go run. We just simply said, hey, go create the scheduled task and then set a time. And then the atomic will actually, whatever time you specify, it'll then just rip it for you. So it kind of combines the two. The next one is an interesting one. So this one is using PowerShell to download the DLL host, which is actually a fast request proxy, FRP, right? Which we actually have a new atomic, and we're going to do a special bit on it at the end.
Yes.
So in this case, there wasn't an explicit one for just downloading a binary, right? So what we did is we just took one that was very similar. It still uses the invoke web request. So you still have different data sources from EDR, PowerShell logging, network telemetry, etc., to kind of identify it. But we also are then going to say in the case of like a larger incident where it's multi-endpoint impact, where an adversary will potentially do it across multiple endpoints, we're going to use WinRM and sessions within Invoke to actually run this against multiple endpoints. So we'll show where we modified that. The next one's kind of a big one. So there's actually a lot to decompress into this, but actually we had an atomic that does almost all of this. In this case, they're creating an account called default account and setting a password, whereas our atomic is using the guest account. But what we did is we slapped create a new account. So that's the T130. I don't remember. I should have added annotations of what the actual atomic was. Either way, we're actually going to combine two atomics to test this one. So the first one's actually going to use the net command, similar to what they did, to actually create the account locally. And then the next atomic is the one that's actually going to activate the account, add it to the appropriate users, and assign it to be a part of the remote desktop users. So this is kind of an instance where you may not just have all of this in one nice package, but you actually combine multiple atomics and stack them, atomic stacking, to create the desired kind of outcome that we're kind of seeing within this report. And the same is kind of true for a few of the other ones. So at the very bottom, and again, we're kind of rinsing and repeating the exact same thing. Take the idea, search is this thing relevant, and then go do it. So in the case of the PowerShell for grabbing the SIDs, then domain enumeration using WMIObjects, and then the last one is actually two atomics stacked together. So the first one is actually going to do the mini dump, and then the second one is going to actually zip up and compress the actual dump file. So that's where you can then, again, not just need to have everything come back into one, but you can actually then piece multiple together to create the desired outcome. So that's like super high level.
Yeah. I think it's perfect. And like something I know, like I used to do in the past was, I mean, anybody could do it, right? Is you can go in and just take these commands straight from the report and just drop them in a batch or a shell PS1 file and just let it run, right? But the beauty of it, I mean, you could technically modify these when you're running them with Atomic with dash prompt for arguments, I think is the command, prompt for args or prompt. But yeah, there's lots of options, but this is great. I'm just ready for the demo. So
we're gonna do it live.
Yeah, let's do it live.
Do it live.
You want me to run mine first? You want to run yours first?
You can run yours first.
I don't know if mine. I think mine.
If you're not up, I can take it.
Do it.
It's all good. Did we do it? All right.
Shred it.
They don't call me Master Shredder for nothing.
I'm already in it. No, I'll wait for you.
Oh,
go ahead.
I don't know how to share screen quick enough. Stop sharing. Present. Share.
I should probably clean up my environment because I think I already ran it.
Okay, so can you see this? Is my VM box?
Here, let me drop it
again.
It is, but it's fine.
Okay.
It doesn't bug anybody.
Gotcha. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to use invoke atomic red team, which is the executor framework using PowerShell to invoke the actual atomics themselves. Then we're going to actually do, again, which we touched on earlier, which is how do we go from single endpoint to testing this across multiple endpoints and doing our validation on that front. So in this case, I've already kind of set that up. So I've imported the module. I've created the variable to store the PS session, which is going to be run across 4 endpoints. But then we can kind of step into some of these tests. So the first one, which we alluded to, which was the scheduled task. So in this case, we have the it comes with an argument that you can actually change. So you can manually, so if you were going to script this out, kind of like what we have presented and we have in our gist, is the ability to modify the configurable arguments. So in this case, what time you want it to execute at. So right now it's 2:34 my time now, so it's time to work, but I could then change it out. So that way I can see, can I see the execution after the scheduled task created, similar to how they're doing it. And then I just pass it through. Test GUIDs are probably the best way to associate and make sure you're doing. You can, of course, use things like test name, test number, but let's do this. Let's just kind of rip one as an example. Copy paste works great.
That's the same. I want to get that last G. Yeah. And this is sort of like the the simple method of atomic red team, right? Like being able to just copy paste, ship a test downrange and see what happens.
Exactly.
Love it.
And there it is. And then we could go, and then again, we'd want to think about, okay, what is the expected outcome? What things do I think should have recorded it? Being that it's on this single instance, looking at things like Windows event logs, EDR data, any kind of interesting thing that would help me validate or detect suspicious activity for scheduled task creation. Scheduled tasks, generally, those are difficult as there could be things like simple Google updates. So trying to find every single instance of a new scheduled task creation might be a little bit noisy, but definitely there are some ideas for fidelity detection.
But how often are you seeing /XML and an XML file being passed across a fleet?
Exactly.
You know,
good question.
That's what I would hunt for.
For sure. There's a lot of different things, and it all comes down to the context, right? Like if you want to go through and, step by step, try and mimic or emulate this exact report, then absolutely you want to do that, and you can key off of it. But if we think about writing the analytics from a broad standpoint, so we're not just saying, cool, I have detection for this particular threat, because if you do it just keyed off of those specific things, then you potentially run into gaps, right? Or you've too focused the detection to that particular thing versus potentially having coverage for more than just that single threat.
Random question, when you threat hunt, Paul, how are you approaching like scheduled tasks? Are you taking like this high level and then you start drilling into like the /XML? Like how do you start if you're like, I'm going after this DFIR report, where do you begin on your scheduled task?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. It depends on the data available, right? If I have only a single data source, I'm tied specifically to that. But again, if we think about what actually happens when we execute that particular thing, so in the case of scheduled tasks, like what happens downrange once it's executed, right? There's an XML file written to a specific path. There's some other things that are registered that enable that scheduled task. So by thinking about it that way, I can start to key off, right? I generally start wide, cast my net, see what's kind of there, and then start to drill in. If it's a few hundred endpoints, it's one thing, but if it's a few 100,000 endpoints, right? Trying to key off of specific things that may be interesting in the case of command line parameters, or think about different ways you could execute a scheduled task or create a scheduled task, which is right, kind of like creating different ways of creating services or creating different run keys. So it really depends on the context, but I like to start broad, kind of figure out where how noisy or fidelity is at, and then drill down. But then what are my different data sources? Can I use Windows event logs? Can I use EDR? Are there other things, potentially if it's network-based? Am I looking for like remote scheduled task creation? There's different data sources from the network standpoint that we could use.
Yep. And I think like finding the source of those things is definitely coming to sort of like understanding what data you have and making sure that it's being collected when you run these tests. I was just thinking about like scheduled tasks, the actual task log that's generated. Like if folks aren't collecting it, you don't really know you don't know about that source, but it's there, it's on every endpoint. Whereas like if you rely only on your EDR and that endpoint today is shipping it, but say the EDR filters out, X amount of tasks being scheduled daily or something, you might miss it or whatever, or that's the only source you have and that's the only thing you're relying on to look for and validate scheduled tasks. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's a super interesting point, and especially thinking about it, is it focused on a single organization or even places like MDRs or MSSPs who may have multiple, thinking about it in how you manage it across that board. But if it's a single organization, you generally have the ability to do some baselining and really understanding of potentially where that data is at and what you have. And then, this is a perfect way to validate, like, we have no visibility in this thing. And like, so that's where you can then start to say, okay, and start to work on a project to prioritize like what you need to effectively detect it, right? If it's only a single thing, and then all of a sudden that data source dies one day, like, can you detect that data source going away, or can you get some additional coverage from something else in case that does happen?
Yep. Cool.
So let's do this one, but in this case, what we're going to do is we're actually going to pass the session flag. And if you remember, we created the PowerShell remote session. In this case, we're going to modify it. So we're going to download an innocuous DLL from the Atomic Red Team repo. If you remember from the DFIR report, they downloaded it from an IP address, and it was an executable, which was masquerading as DLL host, which was actually fast reverse proxy. But in this case, we're going to specify, if we had something internal, we could put in something completely different and tell it the, where we want it to get dropped with what name. So in this case, we're going to download it from Atomic Red Team repo. We're going to call it atomic.dll, but we're also going to have it execute on all of the endpoints associated with the remote session. So in this case, if you can see this, we have 4 endpoints that are associated within that session that I created earlier. And of course, I don't know how to copy and paste. Let's try it one more time.
Just as a quick one, I posted the GIS in the chat as well. So,
Ooh, look at that. A nice error. Demos are great with this one. Exception calling start with 0 argument. Access is denied. Okay, that's fine. What if we just take out the input args, since I think it might be angry with the spacing potentially? No idea. Perfect. I'd expect nothing less during a demo of it not working. But what we can do is just take it out and go execute it in this manner. Actually, let's do it with our input args, but we'll just kill the session. But that's as easy as it is create the remote session to the endpoints and then just pass it as a variable inside, but we can actually just test it here. In this case, maybe we'll get it locally. And what we should see is in C.
Oh, is that your holiday bonus?
There's our atomic DLL. Yeah, that was actually some custom malware I created last week. I social engineered myself on that one.
Yeah.
Wound up getting some beacons.
Nice. That is great.
You can see, so there's kind of a validation, right? We didn't see the execution. They didn't call execution in our example. So that's kind of where we're going to stop, right? In this case, because it's PowerShell, so if we have PowerShell logging, we should get that. If we have PowerShell transcripts, we'll get that information. We have EDR, so potentially seeing it being passed through. But then, of course, files being written to disk and then execution. So, and then, of course, network telemetry, the request out to GitHub, pulling that data down. So there's a lot of different points in which we could then go focus and validate what did we see, was it prevented, was it detected, etc. But I'm trying to forget. I don't think, do you want to step through all of them?
You want to just run them?
Why not? Just run them. All right.
Ship it.
Let's see. Can I copy and paste? Let's see.
Yeah, y'all kind of get the gist of it. Between adding the account, the DFIR report does talk about what the XML looks like, which again is very simple as an adversary. You would just literally export it from like task scheduler, and you can import it across multiple endpoints. And within their XML was just running a bat file from the C Windows directory, which obviously stands out as true sketchiness. They do go and attempt, the adversary does attempt to go to like disable monitoring using set MP preference, which is in the full script that Paul just shipped there. Yeah. Starting terminal services. And then kind of the next 2 things here that DFIR report showcases is the disabling, so yeah, you're at disabled defender there, is enabling WDigest authentication, which enforces storage of credentials in plain text, but then also disabling LSA protection, which is what was something we didn't have in Atomic Red Team. And then before we get into that, the last thing that they had performed was the comm services mini dump. And I think that will be probably your last one. Oh, you're on MP Pref. Okay.
That one worked great, as we saw.
Yeah.
I did get the session to work on another test if we saw earlier.
Yes.
I don't know why that one's angry. I think because it's already set.
Yeah. I know. I feel bad. My live demo is going to be all errors with that it's already ran. Thanks.
If we can also add the verbose flag, which will spit out some more information about it. But we can see here, because we passed it 4 times, we'll see 4 kind of the same execution pattern. But
yeah.
So we'll kind of scroll down. I don't know how to copy paste. Okay, so this one just simply adds the firewall rule to allow RDP access in. In this case, again, here's kind of a perfect example of where we're going to take 2 or more atomics, smash them together to get the desired outcome without necessarily needing to have a single atomic do all the things. While it could do that, in actuality, we don't actually necessarily need to, because we can break it down into smaller pieces and then focus on detection capabilities on those specific pieces versus trying to detect the whole thing when we could focus our efforts on a more targeted approach. Not to say that one is right, but if we split them apart, we have a better chance of potentially not missing something versus trying to make it too big or too broad.
Yep.
But in this case, it's going to use the comm services mini dump function to dump LSAS. And then the last piece of this is, you can see, this is simply going to use the compress archive, take an input file, in this case, which is in our last one. This atomic, this is where it stores the file. So we're taking some of those pieces of the other components and then passing them as the input args here. And then the out file, which is here. So the only difference being is that from, these two are, almost identical to what we saw in the report. The only thing that's really changed here is where we're storing those files. But everything else is one for one.
Yep.
So now if we...
The only thing you're missing is exfiltration to example.com.
We could do that. Maybe we could just use our web shell that you have and upload the zip file.
yeah, that'll be good.
the sweet zip file. But in this case, we can also then go prove that and go look at local.
Now I'm curious what this malware is that you created with your bonus.
And there it is.
When you're done later. That's
yeah. So there's the 2. Back to downloads. Here, I'll show you my sweet malware. Quick pivot.
Yep. This should be part
I'm trying to remember what I did in this one. I don't remember what I did. Skip sign in for now. Oh, it's going to be angry because
You've already pwned yourself.
Well, I'm not
bonus has
logged
already
in,
been exported.
Yeah, start my free trial. Okay. All right. Hold on. No, I don't want to pay you any more, Microsoft.
Okay.
Right, let's
unpivot.
Unzip. Extract here. It's being used. All right. Well, we can pivot back later.
Yeah, that's fine. You can show us all those things later.
All right.
Another demo fail.
The demo gods are unpleased with me today. That's fine.
Yes, I know. All right, I'll ship over here. I will run that. Okay, so yeah, so same thing. What we're gonna do is just run this, but just on a single endpoint. So it's all the same test. I'm just removing all of the remoting, which is the right here, multi-endpoint PS session. And I think I put this on my desktop because that's where all things belong.
Is it final v2 final with the naming convention?
What do you mean?
For version control, you don't have like 17 files that start with final and end with final, or
nope.
A final v4 final.
no. But yeah, so same thing, just kicked off. I unfortunately ran this, I think, yesterday or something. So it's probably like, I've already done this and I don't have any AV on here. So of course it's freaking out over like there is no AV because you can't do this. And then the last one, it's compressing, which is super cool. That
So I think it's if you go back to your PowerShell, I'm really curious how it updated 16 firewall rules when the actual Atomic modifies 1.
Yeah.
It says updated 6, updated 16, but the command only executes 1. So this is a perfect example of, inputs versus outputs and expectancies, right?
Yep.
We expect this thing to execute and this expected outcome, and when those two aren't what they should be, we should definitely dig into that. So add that to our what should we do.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to even just understanding what the test is, right? And making sure you're running things, you even understand what you're doing so that you know what you're shipping here. Do you know which test number? It's GUID, right? Is it GUID?
Yeah, it's GUID.
It's GUID.
Test GUID.
Yeah, test GUID. It's this guy. Just do the whole thing. Wrong one. Copy pasta. Woo. Oh. Cancel. Ship. You don't have paste in here.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh. This is fun. Boy. All right, here we go. One more time, people. Copy.
This is great. The beginning of the whole stream looked good with our new logo, and then
I know.
production quality went straight downhill as expected.
Exactly. So this is literally just running 2 netsh commands, creating a group, enabling, and then another group for file and print sharing and enabling.
Okay, so that makes sense for 6 because there are technically 3 of the profiles, which is private, public, domain. So I don't know how 16 came into play, but that's where the 6 comes from, which makes it kind of interesting.
Yep. And these are inbound.
They should be, yes. It should be term serve, Windows remoting, something like that. Windows remote desktop. I forget the exact. Yeah, it's around there.
Wait, isn't it the group name?
Yeah,
desktop.
Banned out. Yep.
Okay.
Boom.
There's a bunch of stuff here.
Oh yeah, which I guess additionally makes sense, right? TCP, UDP rules on top of your profiles, so public, private, domain, etc.
And the other one is file and print sharing group. So
that'll be your SMB. All of the SMBs.
Yeah.
Just go disable inbound SMB to all of your workstations, and you will have great success mitigating some lateral movement techniques.
That's amazing. Okay.
But yeah, so just kind of a quick and dirty way of taking a report, kind of just going through and stepping through, like, what can we do? And it kind of gives you the starting point. Then you can do some, again, really fancy things like going from single to multi-endpoint. Then when you think about, okay, I have a golden image and all of my endpoints are based off this image, we all know that they are all not, you have 10 of them. All 10 are probably not configured remotely the same. So it gives you a good point to validate based on, because marketing probably has some different OUs or policies or tools set up differently than accounting, et cetera. But at the end of the day, is the pipeline still the same, right? Like, are we still getting the telemetry? Is it generating the same type of telemetry? Are we able to have the detections effectively the same? Why or why not, right? And kind of digging into that. So that's kind of like the starting point of just, hey, I want to rip a bunch of atomic tests. Like, cool, we made some noise, but let's get a little bit more target with it. And it kind of helps us to just figure out like where we're at from a detection capability standpoint. There's a lot of great resources from like the Purple Team emulation framework from the Scythe, which has like a great framework to follow of how you could potentially go about like doing more standardized, I don't want to say sophisticated, not the right word, like repeatable like framework to actually do it in a cohesive and consistent manner. But this kind of just gets the ball rolling of, I start at ground zero and I kind of want to start my baby steps and kind of just get the ball rolling. This is kind of like how I think about like, if I wanted to go emulate this, how would I do it?
Yep. Start with your single endpoint testing and then span that out to your multi-endpoint infrastructure that you have for testing, and yeah.
And then you could do crazy things and create different remote sessions for different endpoint groups, chain your atomics together, and then basically just rip it from A to Z and then have it pivot from one endpoint to the next, to the next, to the next. So you have some interesting ideas from there when you kind of get to that phase of where you're at to where you want to go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sweet.
What's next? I don't remember. Yeah, generally we'd go into mitigations, but completely forgot about those.
You already said it. Just disable SMB. We're good. So
there you go. There's your
like
mitigation tip for the day.
All mitigations.
No,
and PowerShell.
We'll touch
disable
on
PowerShell.
Yeah, nobody uses it anymore.
No, that's not a top 5 or anything. I think that's over. Yeah, this is our first ever segment. I love how you're cracking a cold one open. I'm already out of coffee.
My nice, tasty LaCroix.
Oh, yeah.
Very classy.
This is our first mini segment called Mini AF. And so we decided that there was a lot of content for FRP, fast reverse proxy, and ngrok and things like that. And so I felt like we needed to just we had to segment this into its own thing. These are officially going to be called secure application ingress providers, which is amazing as an enterprise. I'm going to go buy a secure app ingress provider to blow through my firewall. And so
buying a proxy.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So ngrok just closed, which is awesome. For ngrok, a little co, 50 million series is awesome. And so ngrok's going to go from little toy to big toy. And now you're gonna have to take this through your accounting purchase process and all that kind of stuff because they're getting big, right? And so Casey Smith, Sub T on Twitter, has gone on about ngrok and FRP, and there's other ones like local tunnel, and there's so many in this space. You can find so many of them on GitHub. People build these for fun, and the idea is that Bob in accounting is hey, or Bob in development is I want to share my website to Paul on the other side of the country, but I don't want to have to deal with IT and get them to open a port. And they're obviously going to say no, because nobody wants to open a port to my workstation. So what better way than to kick up ngrok and just auto generates the domain. I just pass that to Paul. Paul clicks it, accesses my little website so he could test it locally. And or pass it to the team on Slack, and everybody could pop it and play with it, do whatever, right? So so the joke here is you have your fancy $100,000 firewall with all this little threat stuff, and this just goes poof right out to APT. APT has full access to your machine, and your EDR, AV, next gen AI, EV, AV, E8, XDR license is moot at that point, because literally it's got full access. And so for this particular demo for ngrok, is I just put a little web shell on my server, and I'm just going to pass the link to Paul here and let Paul just click it and play with it. I'll show it live here too, but yeah, it's super fancy. I don't know if it's fancy, but it's just super funny to watch these little tools become things, and really big things. And so FRP in particular, fast reverse proxy, on the right hand side of our screen, is very similar in the sense that as an adversary, you'll set up FRP as your middleman or on a server somewhere. So in my case, I set it up on DigitalOcean. And then on the client side, they would just connect to your proxy, to the middleman, to the FRP server, and then you as the adversary on the other end would access it from there. But yeah, they're all very similar, same thing. It just blows past firewalls and everything like that. These things are great. As a developer, as an APT, you just want to get that quick access and that quick win. So here's the money. And then before I hop into this demo, because this is a little bit more detailed, I wanted to show this LSA protection one. We wrote a new Atomic, and I'll ship that PR when we're done. I haven't done it yet. But basically, in enabling LSA protection will tell Windows to, store the credentials in memory more securely for LSAS and all that. But what this particular adversary did before they left, I think it was like day 1 or day 2 or something. I don't remember. It's in the timeline. They disabled it through a quick regad, and they just changed it to like that 0. So it zeroes it out, regad, pop it in there, run SPPL 0, and that was it. So it's like amazing. I was actually really surprised we didn't have this in Atomic Red Team, because we have so many like other things in Atomic. So
We have the
writing
W
that,
digest as well, right?
yeah, that was in there. Yep, that one's in there. But yeah, this one wasn't, which I was really surprised. But we got it, so I'll ship that PR, and I think that is it. I'm going to go ahead and we will jump into all these fun things then. I couldn't create like a FRP Atomic because infrastructure, lots of infrastructure, all that fun stuff. So I'm trying to think of where the best place to start here. I guess we'll just start with ngrok. So ngrok is as simple as going to the site. You can sign up and you get a little bit more features from it. And you can see there are 50 million around at the top there, which is awesome. And it's as simple as literally running these commands. Like you want to SSH into a machine. Like if I wanted Paul to have SSH access to my machine, ngrok TCP22, pass to Paul, he's in like instant. Like these things are just like straight up awesome, right? Here's your HTTP 80, here's like with domains. And then when you pay for it, you do have the opportunity to have like a custom domain. So it's no longer just hitting like ngrok.io. It's now going to be hitting bobspizza.com that I just, spun up as aptX and, I'm now using. So you wouldn't know it's ngrok anymore. Maybe you would based on IP space, but otherwise I'm in and I'm out. So it's that awesome. Yeah, so it's as quick as that. Oh, go ahead, man.
No, just a quick question. Is it only just the ngrok domain, or do they have like a few that they could potentially use or round robin?
Yeah. Good question. There is I think there's 5 total domains that they use, and I have a detection for that. Good question. Let me see if I hit the right keyboard key. Yep. So this is on the research.splunk site, and this is the ngrok on network. And they are as simple as looking for like ngrok.com IO, and then their ngrok tunnel site, and then they have it in backwards, corgan.lenet.com. So it's just reversed. But yeah, that's kind of their commonality of their network side. Yeah. So there's a lot to these little tools. They're great. Like I mentioned, you could pay for them and go at it. The other cool thing is once you do spin it up on a host, here it is, just like the simple, like, boom, like show me your help. It just gives you the quick examples. If you wanted to spin it up fast, HTTP 80, if you have a little website, again, you wanted to share, other little commands you can kick off and whatnot. What was I going to say? I think that's it for that piece. Oh, yes. It has a little website. You can hit localhost 4040. So if you wanted to like inspect the traffic coming in, hitting your web shell or whatever, you can do all that here, which is really like just so clean. What a neat tool.
So good.
But yeah. So So what I did is I just created like to make it as simple as possible. I just created another IIS website, and I added the Antac web shell, which randomly is inside the Nishing project. And this web shell is just an ASPX. Kind of the neat thing about it is it's a web shell ASPX, but when you log in, you literally have like full PowerShell, and it's like that clean. And so you can run all your stuff, right? Like the most important thing is just obviously starting calc. It'll go and ship that off. It'll run that and do all that fun stuff. You can upload files, you can encode, execute, all based in just like a simple little shell. if you wanted to play with this at home, just change your username and password right here on line 14. Artifact wise, playing with that particular web shell, it's literally running PowerShell straight from W3WP. So it's a quick, easy find as you're playing. In quick blurb, don't forget to hunt naked. And this is I feel like I need to post this and make a banner. But whenever you're using sysmon, make sure you're using your hunt naked sysmon config.
There it is.
yes, perfect. So that is the ngrok side. It's a little bit more in depth for FRP. I didn't realize that. And then alongside with FRP, I think it was like in the last 2 weeks, I'm hearing more about FRP being used by adversaries, which is kind of interesting. And as defenders, like you might want to start thinking about these things. The one in the DFIR report, so interesting like sidebar on this DFIR report for FRP. We were digging into it, and it looks to be a custom like adversary compiled version of FRP because the config is in it. And it's connecting back to the server, and then the adversary will take from there. So they call out in the blog that they only know that it's FRP based on like Yara rules. So that's the only way they know that it's what it is. And so what I did for my test here is I just got the release package here. Just go into releases, grab it for your Linux and Windows, whatever it may be. And then kick it up from there. Now, goofing with it, I found that there's obviously two like pieces here. You have the server side and the client side. And so what I did is simple enough as just kind of copying and pasting all of these things. And I believe I have it loaded up here. I'll just show my config. When you do download it, you get a full config, which shows you kind of all the different functions for the client side, which there's a crap ton. And then on the other side of it, for just a simple client config, I created this. I was testing some stuff for the web shell here. You can actually like host a little static file with it. It's kind of cool. And this is like the server side. So it's telling it to connect back to my server on the other side here. And I use as a simple auth token, which all APT use. And let me flip back to the browser.
So,
yes.
Question.
Server, client. Yeah.
When you have that, so like in the case of the DFIR report, they potentially would have had the INI file come with it, right? It wouldn't just be embedded in the binary. You'd have to download the INI file with it. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. That's why I think from the report, it doesn't look like they had the INI, and or if it was like truly frp.exe type thing, right? I think what they had literally was a potentially compiled one.
Like custom compiled, so they could have potentially embedded that information inside of it, which kind of jives if it was only matching via specific Yara config, and if you modify it to include that, so that way it's self-contained.
Yep. Yeah, when you look at the sample on VT, it doesn't really have any of like the standard FRP like artifacts like natively. It's not just like FRPC, So yeah, it's definitely a little bit different. Let me share the other side here. So this is the server side over here. So what I'll just kind of quickly show what is in the FRPS, the server side INI. Told it to give it a log because adversaries like the log, and your port, your address, things like that. So it's pretty simple. Ooh, man, my VI skills, they're on fire. I can get out of it.
Got out of it.
I know. All right.
The one thing that went right on a demo today.
Yeah. Now just see if I can start this. Okay. So that is now listening on 7,000, waiting for my clients. I know it comes off very like C2E, and I actually shipped a Twitter poll on this because I was curious how many folks out there are using FRP as as something to front their C2. Pretty much out of all the hundreds of votes that I got, or out of all the votes I received, I'm not gonna say hundreds, can't say hundreds. Yeah, out of the 12 votes was what's FRP, which is amazing. And no. So I highly suspect maybe red teams haven't began to help orgs in assessing the risk of like these like proxies, reverse proxies in the orgs like that. Did I share my screen on that? Are you even seeing this? No, you're not. Okay.
No, sorry.
Be sharing because I'll even drop it in chat because it's so important. Yeah, basically nobody uses this, but apparently the APTs. We're calling everything APTs now. Good job, Mike. Okay.
Heck, to be fair though, I think this group is considered an APT.
Oh yeah, it's phosphorus, which is APT.
I don't remember, but I do think
35.
The one time we're like, we're going to do some commodity stuff, and then we pick an APT.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that is that side. Servers there. Now let's go back to our client, which is here. Looking at Twitter because our end user is busy on Twitter today.
So much work.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So client side is literally kicking that off, and I'm going to let that run. It's connected. I'm going to flip back to server so everybody can see how late that is. So here it is checking in, and that's it. Like now I have my check-in to my C2 or my proxy. The idea would be to hit this address now. That was my next step because I totally forgot my demo. Like, what am I doing today? So let's hope this works. I'm going to try it before I even share it. Yep, it works.
Do it live.
Let's see. I don't know the username and password. I don't know the username password now.
Admin?
What was it?
I don't know. Is it the same as yesterday? Oh wait, no, that was the shell.
What was the one I gave you yesterday?
I don't remember. I don't think I hit the FRP. I hit the shell.
Oh, okay. What do you see on the screen? Let me reshare my machine here.
I see the FRP server.
Okay. Let me click it here. And let me reshare my Windows box because everybody has to see me fail at this. So boom, here is me attempting to access this. And I'm trying. Oh yeah, ABC. That's awesome. Okay.
Way more.
Why would I not use admin? I don't know. So yeah. There's the simple. I'm literally hosting a page off this machine, and like I'll ship this to the channel, or I'll put it in the Atomics on a Friday. There. It's all you want to click it and confirm that you can access it from random places on the internet. So it's literally blowing past everything. You're accessing my server hosted on DigitalOcean, which is then accessing my server on my client on AWS. And I'll show the server side for funsies. So that's what it is. Oh yeah, cool, neat tool.
It is.
Back on here. Okay, we're hitting time. We're like over, and I knew we would because today's kind of a lot of stuff.
Long. Yeah, let's keep going. Let's hit the slides. I think that's it.
Oh, we didn't show LSA.
No,
We didn't show.
Oh, you mean actually rip it? Oh, just copy and paste? Yeah, copy and paste it. Let's go.
All right. So yeah, I got this. So I wrote the test. I mean, it's so easy to do these things in Atomic. Yeah, that's it. And then if you want to flip over to here. Nope. I'm just going to leave that running because I want others to run stuff. Here we go. Okay. Invoke Atomic T1562, which I'm probably not correct on that. Show details. I am right. Okay. It's going to use the command prompt. Elevation is obviously required. It's going to do the reg add. And then if you want to clean it up, you can do the cleanup. So let me get some windows here. How about this? Bring this up. Okay. So magic, boom, done. And obviously you can go into the registry and validate that. I'm just gonna run cleanup. Boom, PR will be in later today.
I know somebody to YOLO merge it.
Yes, that's all I need.
Approved.
Yeah, that's so simple. Yeah, man. Do you want me to dig into Splunk and look at any other artifacts from all this testing we've done today, or I had
No, I think
all the
just
exchange
pivot to like
stuff
some of
and-
your exchange analytics.
Okay.
'Cause I think this we forgot to actually like document them, but we have them.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll just kind of like bring it back to that. These are the IIS logs in Splunk, similar to what you had there, Paul. And I obviously had a different user because it just auto generates that. So yeah, very obviously all the same type of data, just in the Splunk format, which again brings that question of making sure things are parsed out properly, which I think some of mine is not parsed out properly. So want to make sure you got good parsing and your analytics will actually tap it properly. And that's just keying off the auto discover portion within those logs. The actual analytic we ship in Splunk is a little bit different here. And then the other thing I wanted to show was this is one of the web shells. So I basically just searched for it. I ran this earlier today, but you can see, where this is in a couple different sources, I believe. This is coming. I have the Aurora EDR tool running. I have IIS logs, exchange management logs in here. So kind of show that. But yeah, so where's one here? This is Sysmon, obviously capturing the file modification, W3WP, writing that shell ASPX into the OA path there. Those all kind of stand out. And then here's that ASPX, the request coming in. You'll see the post, you see the gets, somebody hitting some randomized, generated ASPX file. This right here, I believe, is coming from Aurora, my fancy EDR. Yeah, this is Aurora's application event log. It's a little noisy. It's not parsed out. I don't have the TA, again, bad parsing. This does pull from the Exchange commandlet logs, which I'll show in just a second. But you can see here, this is the new mailbox export request occurring that's being captured there. And what else? What's this one? Boom. This is security event log. This is a event code 5145. Can't remember off the top of my head. 5145. Do you remember? This is just auditing, disk auditing, file audits, I think. But yeah, I think these are file audits for Windows, and they're going to be extremely noisy. Actually has IP port here too. I can't remember, but you see the ASPX here too. Lots and lots of artifacts, and I think as defenders, if you run these tests in your environment and you have all the logging, this is like such a great way for validation. Confirming that all these things are properly showing up. And yeah, my next one here. Oh, this is W3WP spawning command in PowerShell. I ran this a lot, so I hit this all time because I just wanted to show when you run the proxy shell or proxy not shell module in Metasploit, I mentioned it's kind of noisy, and you can see it literally drops these giant echoes, of base 64 on the endpoint. Spawn, so W3WP to command.exe, and it just bounces all kinds of stuff. And then if you go to the right here, these are just some additional things that are ran, either from both those modules or a couple POC codes that I've ran as well over time.
Yeah, the proxy shell is a little bit less loud. There's still a lot of good capabilities for it, but the proxy not shell is extremely loud. So it basically takes writes two VBS files, one's base 64 encoded, and then runs the C script to write out the binary to disk and then call the execution of that. So the lineage is pretty insane. And that's what you're seeing with the Echo Oz. And that's if you go into the actual Metasploit module, you'll see kind of like what they're doing with it. But similar setup in the exchange piece, but the actual like endpoint of what happens after post exploitation. This is where like it's probably one of the loudest of it. So there's a lot of opportunities there.
Yep. And I think like it's definitely very good to play with the modules from Metasploit, even though they are very noisy. I think too, as defenders, you have to try multiple avenues. If you have an internal red team, obviously, like hopefully they're customizing these to like showcase like more evasive scenarios of, you know, not running CSV file or VBS files on disk and things like that. There's so many artifacts from Metasploit alone. I just searched like that VBS in particular, just so, it's full screened. Can you still see me?
Yes.
We're good. Okay. But yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of, you know, if you got your file mods and things like that, all that stuff will obviously show up.
And even though we mentioned like changing it up and tweaking for variations, even you write something that is going to pick off the default setup, like you'll probably have good success, right? Can't tell you how many times and frequently off the shelf, no change, straight as is, download from a repo, run it. It is verbatim. Like you can key off the exact things and get success. Not to say that's what you should just call it a day as, but that's like if you were to go put it in, you've increased your detection capabilities, and then you can then focus on variations, or if they start tweaking things, do I still have coverage? Do I need to change things? Of course, in the case of Exchange, like please go patch. Limit your external exposure to that, but there's still a lot of good things. And I think that's your Exchange management log analytic, yeah?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, I wrote this particular analytic two ways, Exchange management logs, which hat tip you gave me, you had mentioned to me about, and that was money. And then the other one that I actually put these commandlets in is a 4104 query, because I feel like you should go obviously as many options as you can. If you're collecting 4104, it's money magic. Just to
for those who may not be familiar, what's 4104?
Script log logging. But yeah,
you gotta say PowerShell logging and call it a day.
I know.
Yes,
I know. I like the script log, PowerShell script log logging. Yeah, that's quite the money, because it does have it's just rich with everything, every script, right? But yeah, so, and then in this case, these are just the Exchange logs, commandlet logs, and you can see here there are the automatedness of this. So this is the piece, like I think of as your more I guess if you're using a red team instead of just using this as Metasploit, if you're using your red team, internal red team or something, you're having a pen test, I would suspect these would look not so auto-generated, and you would want them to do the more evasive route of not having just like auto-generated. I just kicked off that standard default off the shelf, like you said. I would expect that to actually be like parameter name is something else, and my subject equals, you know, Bob's files of the day, not webshell.aspx, right? All that kind of stuff. So, and most likely through like a pen tester red team, you would be using, Bob's account most likely to showcase the fact that it's, an non-administrative based account who's now dropping shells. So, but yeah, these are great logs. Let me back this out real quick. They're very verbose. I didn't realize how rich they were, and this is going to be nuts. But yeah,
that's only one. If you think about the amount of logs that Exchange has and capability logging, and is insane. I think Zach from the instant handling team and I were testing the proxy not shell yesterday, the day before, and the amount of we looked at 20 to 22 different log sources purely from network share auditing.
Yep, that 5145.
5145. Thank you, Andy.
Yep. That's money.
But no, a lot of good stuff from that. Power, like just that the downfall that we wanted, that I was hoping that we were going to solve, is to do some of the just some basic things like the 3 commands, which was add a user to that import export role, generate a new export request, then remove it. The one thing that we ran into that I couldn't figure out, and so maybe somebody can help out, is how can we get Exchange PowerShell, the PowerShell module? Because the way I found it was that you had to use the installer of Exchange in order to do it. So to use that in Atomic made it really difficult. But if there's a way to whether include the PS module or have it if it's like in PowerShell Gallery, that makes it easier to implement and then just go run the test. So that was kind of like the one thing that we were hoping to do, because I think from a testing standpoint, it's kind of important to look at, like, can you see it in Exchange? Like, how do you validate it, right? And then can you see it in things like PowerShell logs if you're collecting those? So if anybody has any insight into that, Exchange PowerShell management logs, not the PowerShell, not Exchange Online. Those are different, and those have different capabilities and functionality versus the Exchange management for on-premise.
Yeah, that would be awesome to get in there. I feel like there is an Atomic test for the Active Directory commandlets. I'd have to double check. I thought there was something in there in the past someone added, but I can't remember now. Maybe not.
Yeah, because I tried to look for the adding permissions, the creating the mailbox request, and because those commandlets are specific to Exchange, they weren't in there, but they are interesting to potentially go see if we can figure out how to pull them out and add it in, because I think it is valuable to test with.
Yes.
Or if you have it, just go test them with a fake one. Obviously, like, there's not super foul. Just make sure you clean up afterwards, and obviously don't break prod. Don't hold me liable for just ripping random commands you find on the internet. Like downloading a POC from GitHub and then ripping it, and then turns out it was actually not a POC. Looking at you, Andy. So, Andy, if you got any more POCs you want to drop, like, we'll share them out right here for you.
That's good.
I think that's a wrap.
That was a lot of content. I loved it.
So definitely in the future we have how we're going to kind of structure these going forward. It's our third one, so still getting the kinks and everything worked out of how we want to do it. So we will share out the emulation scripts that we created. We are the El Camino of security testing. We will have a GitHub repo where we'll actually store things like the references that we have here on the slides. We'll also have more scripts and utilities and just content to kind of get you all in the right spot. So that will be coming soon, as well as some good references to the proxy shell, proxy not shell, and the network analytics that Mike has been working on. So you can peep those at research on Splunk's website. There's also some great resources out there from Elastic and others from the community for Exchange as a whole, but proxy is an interesting one. I think it's going to become more prevalent and relevant.
Yeah,
I think it's been around. I just don't think people have been looking for it. It's one of those, we don't see it because we're not looking for it or haven't seen it enough yet, but I think it is going to become more notable in the future.
BK malware. So there was that recent campaign from SecureWorks. Since we're in the after party here, I'll just go into that. Let me see. This campaign. I mentioned FRP. I think there was another one I'll try to find here in a second. This one found by SecureWorks looks like a Iranian government-sponsored Cobalt Mirage threat group using fast reverse proxy tool, which it's a modified version of it known as Tunnelfish. but yeah, that was a version I saw this week. And then I think there was one more. Was it the Mandiant one that came out this week too, or last week for the signed malware? Was it that group that was doing it too? Let me.
Oh, the driver signing.
Yeah, Mandiant. Type.
The attestation signed malware.
Yeah. Yep. Do you have the link?
I do. Yeah, they have a whole bunch of stuff for FRP.
That's right. I think one of them was the fact that it was FRP was signed, right? They had signed it.
Yeah, there's actually a few in there. So if you go to the
Here, I got it here.
IOC table at the bottom, there's at
Perfect.
least 10 plus that are in there, and they even explicitly call out fast first proxy.
Okay, let me stop that one, and I'll share this new one. There you go. Yeah, so I think this is the second instance, right? Within like 5 minutes of me talking about it. Here's FRP again. Yeah, FRPC, this is the client side. And from what I understand, it was signed. The following table issues samples signed by EV certs where the org name is that. And there's a bunch. I haven't spent the moment to see if there's like a, did you just share it? Did I miss that? I'm sorry. Was it not sharing?
No, I shared the link.
Thanks, sir. Oh, cool. But yeah, this is such a crazy amount of data, man. Like, yeah.
Yeah, we could spend probably 2 sessions talking about this report itself.
Yep.
But no,
that one.
It's good. Why those look familiar? But
what's up?
No,
good.
Flashback, deja vu.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, FRP. Yeah.
So I think going forward, we're gonna take like a DFIR report, break it down. We'll spread it out over a couple sessions, so that way we can really focus on setting up the test, executing tests, looking at data, talking about detection and mitigation. Just because it is a lot of data, and we totally forgot to actually include detection and data other than just written a test. But it's kind of the setup, right, to understand about like kind of getting the ball thinking about how we can take something, a report, go look at Atomic Red Team, and even just copy and paste stuff out and test the efficacy. You don't have to do anything crazy or special. We do have a cool tool in the works to hopefully just have some pre-built stuff that you can go download and then rip. We promise it's not malware. And go from there. So yeah, we'll have an official repo with the data and get this content up there. Of course, this is be posted onto YouTube, so you can go look at it later. We'll share out the links, all that good stuff. But it's been fun. It's been real.
Yeah, this is a good one. I'm excited. I'm excited to lay this groundwork to kind of move forward with deeper reports and any kind of report and just kind of rip it, share the atomics out and help people do more testing.
The idea is to really start at ground zero and work our way up, right? Like start at the basics and then just kind of go from there and really just branch out and show that it's not as intimidating, but understanding where to start, how to start, and kind of just some different aspects and what to think about as you're kind of going through these. I think it's important. And get some variants because there's a lot of different methodologies of purple teaming and how to think about detection and testing. But I think it's good to just kind of get some different views and hopefully we get some guest speakers in for the next few sessions and get some cool stuff ripping. We got some stuff in the pipeline.
Yep. Stick around. There's more to come.
That's all, folks. We got our sweet logo now. We're official. We're legit. Now we can do the real stuff.
Yes. Now we can actually do this.
Yeah. Production quality is still going to be terrible, but we got a logo now.
It's all good. Kidding. We're working on more logos, more stickers. I need a sticker.
Stickers tomorrow.
Yeah, that's tomorrow, man. Well,
find them in your local neighborhood soon.
Yes, it's your local con. I feel bad for those that are still here, but hey, they're sticking around.
Yeah. Thanks for jamming
Yeah,
and letting us
thank
ramble
y'all.
and figure it out.
Hope everybody found this something in here that's of interest, and yeah, we'll ship this out here in a few minutes.
See y'all.
Bye. See ya.